Jessica, your mother committed suicide.
Yes.
How long ago?
June of 08.
June of 08. Your dad?
February 2002.
2002. And in both of your cases, it was a turning point in your life.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, you were a youngster, right?
21.
You're 21.
Yeah.
And it's not something that gets talked about a lot. In fact, of the many social issues that do get talked about, it seems like suicide awareness or prevention is way down the list.
It's very taboo. We kind of touched base on it. It's very taboo to talk about suicide. I don't know why. It needs to have a voice.
Well, why was it difficult for you to talk about it before it stopped being difficult? I assume there was a period of time where...
There really wasn't. I've always been... I mean, I really had no association with suicide before my mom, so it never came up in conversation ever until my mom. And then after my mom committed suicide, now it's just something that there's a need to get out because it does happen so often and so many lives are affected. But it's society says, oh, suicide, you can't.
Why do you think that is, Kelly?
I think that people just don't know what to say to you, honestly. You know, and then we never talked about it much within the family too. I mean, after my dad's funeral, life went on, but we didn't talk about it.
Well, just last month, the daughter of a close friend was murdered in your hometown.
Yes.
Teenage girl stopped in a convenience store at the wrong time and was killed. And as bad as that is, it seems like we're socialized to know how to react to it. The outpouring of support, grief, not grief, I guess that's really the right word, but support for the people who are affected by it. It seems like we know how to act if we're close to that person. What's the disconnect if a death happens that affects a person you love, but the death is caused by suicide? Why do people recoil from that?
I think they just don't know what to say.
Well, that's a feeling of guilt or responsibility because, you know, what could I have done?
So do you think people impute that I guess if someone you know is killed, let's say a family member, I know you're sad, so I know how to deal with that. If someone close to you, your father, kills himself, I don't know where you are.
They say that the level of grief that you go through with suicide, you know, I think you have different levels on a normal death, you know, whether it's 1 through 5 or 1 through 10. With suicide, you just stay in the mad step. You're very angry for a very long time. So that even the steps that you just go through is completely different than any other death.
So is it possible then that one of the barriers to me offering the support to you that I might, one of the reasons for that is you're not sure yet how to express yet how even you feel? I
think it's that, and I think we would have the same kind of questions, like why, or you know, what could I have done? What could you have done? It's so hard to explain unless you're in those shoes. Like it's a totally different thing. This is just my opinion, but for me, it's because suicide is a choice. That's the hardest thing for me to accept. Like, yeah, there's cancer. I'm not like trying to downplay these, but cancers are.
She's had all of them, so you're not gonna. You know.
But I mean,
she hasn't even grown toenail. Also.
Gross. I don't like feet. Remember? But and I don't know why it's so hard for people to ask questions, because if people ask me, oh, what do your parents do? I'm like, oh, my dad, my mom's deceased. Like, oh, what happened? I'm like, suicide. But like, oh, they just like automatically just clam and just shut down, and they just don't know how to approach.
Well, even I was at the doctor's office, and you have to fill out, you know, they ask you what's your history, you know, and I'm like, well, my mom and dad deceased. Oh, what happened to your mom? Kidney cancer. Oh, what happened to your dad? Suicide. And they're like, okay, next. You know, they just.
Is it because when the cause of death is suicide, there's an issue of blame that no one is quite sure where it lands? Maybe, you know, maybe someone thinks, well, maybe you were somehow the reason behind it, or your mom.
Well, I told Laura just the other day, I said, you know, I still ask myself, or I still tell myself or question myself, if I had answered the phone Friday night, you know, would things have been different? I personally think so. And you said, what did you say?
You don't have control.
You know, so are you questioning God? That's what you said.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, you know, maybe I am. Because I do think that things would have been different. So the guilt and the self-forgiveness, I think, is something that you battle. I've never figured that one out. I think you live with it.
So then, what's the top priority in your future fantasy world of awareness? For educating people to be watching out for the warning signs? I assume we're talking about prevention and not grief therapy, right? I mean, that's the higher.
Right, just general awareness. It's shocking the amount of people that just don't understand suicide or just don't talk about it. And I think the statistic is every 40 seconds somebody commits suicide.
Really?
Or, in the world, there's, I think, over 30,000 suicide deaths in the U.S. every year. I think every 16 minutes in the U.S. somebody commits suicide. I have a little factoid sheet here.
Well,
and 18 veterans a day commit suicide.
Well, that's a definitely growing problem.
And it affects more people than people are willing to admit or realize. The third leading cause of death for young people my age and younger is the third leading cause of death. People are ending their lives at 20, 15, 14.
Well, you know, our friend David Sabine, who's been a guest on the show, the seminal event in his life was his best friend killed himself, and that launched his life in the direction. He's now a psychologist, psychotherapist, and a writer, and it seems to have an impact upon people who are close to the person who did this, that drives them toward, I would have to say, kind of a searching state of mind. When I was an RA in college, we had a kid exhibiting all the signs of a breakdown. He was in the middle of the semester, he packed up his room. You know, apparently that's one of the red flags, is when you start tidying up your affairs. And he took down his posters, he packed all his clothes in a suitcase, and you know, one of his roommates says, "Hey Lee, Bobby, whatever, you know, he's acting kind of weird." And I'm like, "Oh well, be more specific." Yeah. Well, did anybody have any questions about this subject that we didn't get to? And I know it's kind of a downer. I knew it was going to be a non-traditional show, but I feel like there was merit to talking about this, and I'm still a little iffy about, you know, let's just say we could do something. What that something would be.
I know awareness is the biggest thing right now. Just raising suicide awareness and just helping.
So who does that? How does that happen?
Well, I know, like I have written up here, there's Out of the Darkness. It's.
Watch your beer.
I'm sorry. Out of the Darkness, it's a branch of the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention, and they do walks every year. And this year in Wichita Falls, our walk is going to be on November 3rd at Lucy Park. And that's just a suicide awareness walk, basically just getting the word out there. And there's generally a crowd of about 80 to 100 in Wichita Falls.
That's surprisingly large.
It is. Wow. It is surprising. It's because I think for every suicide, there's 6 immediate people, survivor of suicide, which is like the family and friends. That's immediate. And after mom committed suicide, if she could have seen the people at the funeral, they were standing room only at her funeral. So all those lives were affected, and it's a ripple effect. Because
it seems to me that these warning signs, I mean, it's really as Derek said, in so many instances, it happens quickly and no one sees it coming. Well, then there's not, that seems to be in one category of what a person can be expected to do or say. And then there's another category of people who are giving off signs. And it seemed that would be the helpful thing to be a little more proactive about getting information out, right?
Right, and they say if someone's joking, you think they're joking about suicide. I think it's a call for help. Mm-hmm. And some people are just too afraid to admit that they need help. And there is a crisis hotline you can put up as well for people to call if they do feel like they are.
Well, in my one educational psychology course I took to be an RA in college, so you know, it was a big deal. It's in depth. They said never assume someone's kidding when they kid about suicide. Oh, never, yeah. Ever. Yeah. So there's one lesson. There's one thing to take home.